A suspended child does not get a stage. Principal Susan Blake's voice cut through the packed auditorium before Lily Miller could sing a single note. The 10-year-old stood frozen under the white school lights, both hands trembling around a small silver recorder, its red light blinking beside the microphone. Behind her, Ethan Miller did not shout. He only stepped closer, one grease-stained hand resting on his daughter's shoulder. Susan reached toward the recorder. "This meeting is not for accusations." Lily swallowed. "Then why did you call me a thief?" 3 hours earlier, the same auditorium smelled of floor wax, paper programs, and cafeteria coffee poured into foam cups. Folding chairs scraped against the gym floor as parents came in whispering, glancing toward the little stage where a blue curtain hung unevenly from a bent rod. At the back, Ethan stood with his denim jacket zipped halfway, the cuffs darkened by old motor oil from a brake job he had finished too late and charged too little for. He kept his eyes on Lily, not on the parents who recognized him as the mechanic from Harper Street Garage, not on Monica Reed, who sat in the front row with perfect hair, a pearl necklace, and the patient smile of someone already certain she was right. Lily was near the stage steps, clutching the recorder the way another child might hold a stuffed animal. Her thumb moved over the worn play button, then away from it, then back again. It was the same recorder she used to practice speaking, the same one that held her mother's old voice telling her to breathe slowly before hard words. Tonight, she was supposed to sing one short song in memory of that mother. Nothing more. Ethan bent down beside her. "You don't have to be brave for the whole room," he said quietly. "Just be honest for yourself." Lily nodded, but her eyes were wet. Across the aisle, Principal Blake spoke with Vice Principal Paul Henson near the side door. Their voices were low, polite, almost invisible beneath the hum of fluorescent lights. Paul kept looking toward the hallway, then at the black camera dome above the entrance, as if a machine could embarrass him by remembering too much. Susan's hand rested on a folder marked Restoring Trust, and when she noticed Ethan watching, she gave him a professional smile that closed like a locked office door. Then Monica Reed rose from her chair and whispered to another parent, not softly enough, "I just hope this poor child gets the help she needs before she embarrasses the school again." Ethan heard it. Lily heard it too. Her shoulders folded inward, but she did not cry. Ethan straightened, his jaw tightening once, then relaxing. He could have answered. He could have made the room turn. Instead, he looked at his daughter and said, "Stand tall, Lily. Nobody gets to decide your name for you." The program began with applause, announcements, and practice smiles. Susan stepped to the microphone and welcomed everyone to an evening about community values. She spoke of safety, trust, responsibility, and the importance of teaching children right from wrong. Each word sounded clean, too clean. When Lily's name was called for the memorial song, she took 2 careful steps onto the stage. Ethan saw her thumb brush the recorder again, just for courage. Then Susan moved fast, faster than dignity should move. "Stop!" The whole room shifted, and for one sharp second, Ethan noticed that the red light on Lily's recorder was still blinking. The red light kept blinking in Lily's hands as Principal Blake stepped between the child and the microphone, smiling as if she were protecting everyone from something unfortunate. "Lily, sweetheart, let's not make this harder." "I didn't steal anything," Lily whispered. "This is not the time," Susan said, and that was how she made the truth sound rude. The auditorium lights buzzed overhead, white and pitiless, shining on Ethan's oil-dark cuffs and the small half-moon marks Lily's fingernails had pressed into the recorder's plastic side. A few parents turned in their folding chairs. Some looked sorry. Most looked curious. Monica Reed rose slowly from the front row, one hand over her heart like she had practiced compassion in a mirror. "Principal Blake is only trying to protect the children," she said, her voice soft enough to seem kind and loud enough to travel. "We all know this has been a difficult situation for Mr. Miller's family." Ethan did not answer her. He bent down, picked up the music sheet that had slipped from Lily's trembling fingers, and smoothed the crease against his palm. It was the song she had practiced for her mother, the one with pencil marks beside the hard lines and a tiny star Lily had drawn near the word brave. "Dad," Lily said, barely audible. I know. They're all looking. Then let them see you standing. Susan's smile tightened. Mr. Miller, please don't coach her from the floor. This is a school matter. The phrase landed cleanly, professionally, like a stamp pressed into paper. School matter. As if a child's name could be handled in a folder. As if a father's place ended at the auditorium aisle. Ethan stood. Not fast. Not angry. Just steady enough that the row behind him stopped whispering for half a breath. Then handle it like a school, he said. Not a rumor. Somewhere near the back, a chair leg scraped. Paul Henson appeared at the side wall, holding a tablet against his chest, his tie slightly crooked. He glanced once at Lily's recorder, then up toward the camera dome above the auditorium door. It was a quick look, almost nothing, but Ethan saw it because mechanics notice small wrong things. A belt whining before it snapped, a brake pedal sinking half an inch too low, a man checking a camera when a child was holding a recorder. Susan turned toward Paul, then back to the room. For everyone's clarity, she said, Lily Miller is under temporary suspension following an incident involving the charity envelope. Until that review is complete, she will not participate in tonight's program. Review? Ethan asked. You searched her bag in the hallway. Monica's face sharpened behind its polite mask. Because the envelope was found near her locker. Empty, Ethan said. Excuse me? It was empty. The room shifted again, not enough to become support, only enough to become uncertainty. Lily stared at the floor, her cheeks red, her recorder pressed to her chest now as if it could hold her together. Susan lowered her voice in a way meant to sound private while still reaching the first 3 rows. Mr. Miller, I understand finances. Can place families under pressure. Ethan's eyes lifted to hers. The fluorescent hum seemed louder. Poor is not a motive, Principal Blake. No one clapped. No one defended him. That was not how rooms like this worked. Rooms like this waited to see who had permission to be believed. Susan opened the folder marked Restoring Trust and pulled out a pale yellow incident form. The paper made a dry clicking sound as she tapped it against the podium. We have procedures. She's 10. And that is why we're being careful. You called her a thief. Susan paused just long enough for Ethan to know the word had landed where she did not want it. Then she smiled again. I said there was a theft. But Lily looked up. Her voice shook, small but clear. No. In the hallway, you said I was the kind of girl who steals because nobody watches girls like me. The room went thin. Even Monica stopped breathing through her practiced smile. Paul's fingers tightened around the tablet, and the screen lit for a second, reflecting a frozen hallway frame with Lily's locker on it. Ethan saw the timestamp in the corner before Paul turned it dark, and something about the time did not match the clock he had seen above the auditorium doors. Paul turned the tablet dark so quickly that most people missed the hallway frame, but Ethan did not. His eyes stayed on the blank glass for one breath longer than comfort allowed. Not accusing, not reaching, only remembering. A man who spent his life listening to engines learned that truth often came as a small mismatch before it came as a breakdown. Still, when Susan Blake cleared her throat and asked him to take Lily home, for everyone's emotional safety, Ethan did not argue in the aisle. He reached for Lily's music sheet, folded it along the crease she had already made, and slid it carefully behind the silver recorder in her hands. We're going, he said softly. But we're not leaving your name here. Lily's fingers found his. The auditorium doors opened with a tired metal sigh, and the hallway outside smelled like disinfectant, pencil shavings, and the faint vanilla air freshener the school used to make old buildings feel cared for. Behind them, Monica. Reed's voice floated through the closing door. Some fathers would rather fight than teach accountability. Ethan heard it. Lily heard it. He did not turn around. In the parking lot, under a yellow security light that flickered every few seconds, Lily climbed into his old pickup and held the recorder in her lap like something fragile and alive. Daddy, she whispered. What if they're right because everybody thinks it? Ethan started the engine, and the truck coughed once before settling. He looked at her, his face lined with the exhaustion of unpaid bills, late break jobs, and the kind of grief that never fully leaves a house after a wife's voice becomes something stored in a machine. "Everybody can be loud," he said. "That doesn't make them right." He did not say more. He did not make a speech. He drove to Harper Street Garage because the night was not finished, and neither was the work waiting for him. The garage door rattled open to the smell of motor oil, rubber, and cold coffee. A rusted sedan sat under Bay 2 with its front wheels off, and beside it stood Mrs. Whitaker, the school custodian, twisting a paper towel in both hands. Her gray coat was buttoned wrong, one button higher than the other, and her eyes looked red from either wind or worry. "Mr. Miller, I can come back," she said quickly when she saw Lily. "No," Ethan answered, already reaching for his toolbox. "You said the brakes were grinding." Mrs. Whitaker looked down. "I get paid Friday." Ethan slid a jack under the frame. "Then Friday can worry about itself." "You don't have to do that." "I know." Lily sat on the wooden stool near the workbench, her recorder beside a tray of sockets. The red light had stopped now, but a tiny scratch across its silver face caught the garage light each time Ethan moved. He worked in silence, lifting the sedan, removing the tire, showing Lily with 2 fingers how thin the brake pad had worn without making Mrs. Whitaker feel ashamed. Monica would have called it charity. Susan would have called it poor judgment. Ethan called it making sure an old woman got home alive. While he cleaned rust from the caliper bracket, Lily pressed the recorder to her chest and asked Mrs. Whitaker if she had ever seen the hallway clock above the locker's stop. The question was innocent, the kind a child asks when her mind is trying to understand why adults lie. Mrs. Whitaker blinked. "That old clock? It doesn't stop. It runs slow. Always has." Ethan's hand paused on the wrench, only for a second. He did not look up fast enough to scare anyone. He only finished tightening the bolt, lowered the car, and wiped his hands on a blue shop rag. Then, as Lily gathered her things, the recorder slipped from the folded music sheet and tapped against the concrete floor. It did not break. Instead, its small screen lit up, showing a file Ethan had never seen before, created on the afternoon Lily waited outside Principal Blake's office. The recorder's small screen glowed in the garage like a match struck inside a dark room. Ethan picked it up before Lily could worry over the fall, brushing concrete dust from the silver casing with his thumb. The file name was plain, automatic, nothing dramatic at all. Rec_0417. Created 3:42 p.m. The exact afternoon Lily had sat outside Principal Blake's office with her knees together, waiting for adults to decide what kind of child she was. "Did I break it?" Lily asked. "No," Ethan said. "You didn't break anything." But his voice had changed just enough for Mrs. Whitaker to notice. She stepped back from the sedan, one hand on the open door, and looked at the recorder the way people look at a stove they suddenly realize is still hot. Ethan did not press play in front of Lily. He finished Mrs. Whitaker's brake check, wrote a no charge across the invoice, and tucked a copy into the glove compartment so she would not be embarrassed at the counter. Only after her taillights disappeared down Harper Street and Lily fell asleep on the cot beside the office heater did he sit alone beneath the buzzing shop light and listen. At first, there was only hallway noise. A locker door shutting, sneakers squeaking, Lily breathing too close to the microphone. Then Susan Blake's office door opened. Paper rustled. Paul Henson's voice came through low, tight, and unmistakably afraid. "If the timestamp stays, Connor is finished." A pause. Then Susan, colder than Ethan had ever heard her in public. "Then make the hallway match the report." Ethan did not move. Outside, a semi rolled past on the highway, rattling the garage windows in their frames. The recorder kept playing, catching the faint beep of an office phone and the scrape of a chair. Paul said something about the charity envelope, something about parents, something about Monica needing the message before Miller gets loud. Ethan stopped the recording there. Not because he had heard enough, but because his daughter was asleep 20 feet away, one arm tucked under her cheek, still wearing the shame they had put on her like a name tag. He copied the file onto an old garage laptop, then onto a flash drive he used for invoices. No internet. No post. No revenge. Just proof if it was proof at all. By morning, the school had already moved first. An email from Principal Blake arrived at 7:06 a.m., polished and careful, with the subject line, Resolution Opportunity. It said Lily's suspension could be handled quietly if Ethan signed a statement acknowledging family stressors and accepting responsibility for restitution. Beneath the attachment, one sentence had been bolded. This cooperative step may protect Lily's future school record. Ethan read it twice while the coffee went cold beside his wrench set. Then he looked at the timestamp on the recording again. 3:42 p.m. At 8:15, he walked into the school office carrying the recorder, the flash drive, and a folded copy of the email. He wore the same denim jacket, the same work boots, and the front desk secretary looked at the oil under his fingernails before she looked at his face. Susan met him in the conference room with Paul beside her and a printed incident form already centered on the table. "Mr. Miller," she said, gentle as a closed door, "we want to help Lily move forward." Ethan placed the recorder on the table, not dramatically, just carefully, where the fluorescent light touched the scratch across its face. "Then let me see the hallway camera from 3:40 to 3:50. Paul's eyes moved to Susan before his mouth moved at all. "That footage has already been reviewed. Then it should be easy." Susan folded her hands. "You have to understand, raw footage involving minors is protected. What we can provide is the relevant clip." She slid a tablet toward him. The video showed Lily near the lockers, then a hallway angle, then the empty space by her locker again. The time in the corner jumped from 3:43 to 3:50 so smoothly a tired parent might have missed it. Ethan did not. He asked one question quiet enough that Paul had to lean in. "Where did the 7 minutes go?" Susan answered too fast. "A system buffer. It happens." But Paul's hand closed over the tablet and pulled it back before Ethan could look again. In that quick movement, Ethan saw the hallway clock in the frozen frame behind Lily's locker, its minute hand sitting where Mrs. Whitaker had said it always sat, 3 minutes slow, refusing to match the clean story on the screen. The hallway clock sat frozen in Ethan's mind long after Paul pulled the tablet away. 3 minutes slow. Always 3 minutes slow. But in the clip Susan had shown him, the digital timestamp and the old round clock had marched together like they had been trained. Ethan did not accuse them. He did not raise his voice. He only looked at Paul's hand resting over the tablet and said, "May I speak to Harold?" Susan blinked once. "Our security staff are not part of disciplinary meetings. He maintains the hallway cameras." "Mr. Miller, this is becoming inappropriate." Ethan nodded, as if she had said something worth respecting. "Then make it appropriate. Invite him in." The conference room seemed to shrink around the request. The air conditioner clicked above the ceiling tile, pushing cold air over the table where the recorder, the email, and the incident form sat like 3 different versions of the same child's future. Paul adjusted his tie. "Harold is busy. Then I'll wait." That was the test. Not a dramatic one. Not a fight. Just a tired mechanic in a denim jacket choosing patience in a room built to make him feel out of place. Susan's polite smile held for several seconds, then thinned. She sent the secretary for Harold, and while they waited, she slid the incident form closer to Ethan. "This can still be simple," she said. "You sign. Lily returns after a short review, and everyone avoids confusion." Ethan kept his hands folded. Confusion is what happens when 7 minutes disappear. Paul gave a small laugh with no warmth in it. "You fix cars, Mr. Miller. School camera systems are not carburetors." Ethan looked at him then, calm enough to make the insult feel louder than it was. "No," he said, "but cut footage leaves seems to." The room went quiet, not fully, just enough for Susan's pen to stop tapping against the folder. Harold came in smelling faintly of wintergreen mints and rain, his gray security shirt buttoned to the throat. He looked from Susan to Paul to Ethan, then to the small silver recorder on the table. "You asked for me?" Susan spoke first. "Mr. Miller has questions about general camera maintenance. Please keep student privacy in mind." Harold nodded slowly. Ethan turned the tablet back toward the paused frame Paul had tried to hide, careful not to touch the screen more than necessary. The image showed Lily's locker, a strip of beige tile, and the old wall clock above the trophy case. "That clock," Ethan said. "Does it run right?" Harold squinted. "No, sir. Been slow since fall break. Battery contacts loose. I keep meaning to replace the unit." Paul shifted. "That is irrelevant." Ethan did not look away from Harold. "How slow?" "About 3 minutes. Sometimes 3.5. The air conditioner hummed louder. Susan's hand settled flat on the folder. Ethan tapped once, gently, near the digital timestamp on the tablet without blocking the screen. "Then why does the school's clip show 3:47 on the camera and 3:47 on that clock?" Harold leaned closer. His brow folded. "It shouldn't." No one moved. Somewhere outside the conference room, children changed classes, sneakers squeaking across waxed floors, laughter rising and falling like another world, still believing adults were in charge. Paul reached for the tablet. "This is exactly why we don't conduct technical reviews with parents." Ethan slid his hand back, leaving the tablet untouched. "I'm not conducting anything. I asked what time the clock kept." Harold looked at Paul now, not accusing, but less certain than before. "Vice Principal Henson, I logged a camera export yesterday. You requested access to the hallway file twice." Paul's face stayed professional, but the skin around his mouth tightened. "Administrative review. At 4:18 and again at 6:02, Harold added, almost apologetically. Susan stood. "That is enough. Harold, you may return to your post." Ethan did not stop him. He did not ask the old man to choose sides in a room where his job could be threatened by a sentence. Instead, Ethan picked up the folded email and placed it beside the recorder. "Before I sign anything," he said, "I want the full 10 minutes preserved." Susan's eyes sharpened. "There is no need to escalate this. Preserving evidence isn't escalation." Paul gave that same dry laugh. "Evidence of what?" Ethan glanced once at the frozen hallway clock, then at the silver recorder Lily had carried because her mother once taught her to practice hard words. "Evidence that my daughter wasn't the only thing edited." For the first time, Paul did not answer right away, and Harold, halfway through the doorway, turned back as if he had just remembered something worse. The camera room access log did not show only Paul's name, but a second administrative login after the school had supposedly closed. The second administrative login sat in Harold's memory like a loose bolt waiting to fall. He did not say the name at first. His eyes moved to Susan Blake, then to Paul Henson, then down to the tablet as if the floor might be safer than the truth. "Harold," Ethan said quietly, "you don't have to protect my daughter by risking your job in this room." That made the old guard look up. Not because it solved anything, but because it was the first sentence all morning that did not ask a frightened person to carry more than he could hold. Susan stepped forward. "This conversation is over." Paul added, "Personnel access logs are confidential." Ethan nodded once. "Then preserve them." He gathered the recorder, the email, and his notes, careful not to snatch, careful not to perform anger for people who would call it instability. Outside the office, the hallway was changing classes again. Children moved past with lunch boxes and untied sneakers, and Lily sat on a bench beneath a bulletin board that read "Kindness Counts." The words were made from construction paper hearts. One corner had peeled away from the wall. Mrs. Whitaker stood nearby with a mop bucket, pretending to clean a floor that was already clean. When Ethan came out, she looked at Lily first, then him, and her face carried the heavy shame of someone who had seen a wrong thing and survived by staying quiet. "Mr. Miller," she said, barely above the wheels of the bucket, "I found something yesterday." Susan's office door opened behind them. "Evelyn," Paul called, too sharply. Mrs. Whitaker flinched. Ethan did not move closer. He gave her space the same way he had given Harold space. "You don't have to say anything here." She swallowed. "Maybe that's been the problem." From the pocket of her gray work apron, she pulled a folded cleaning note, the kind custodians used to log spills, trash pulls, broken locks, ordinary things that kept a school looking orderly while nobody noticed who did the work. Written in blue pen beside Paul Henson's office was one line. Charity envelope in wastebasket. 4:12 p.m. Removed after admin review. The hallway seemed to narrow. Lily stared at the note, not understanding all of it, only enough to know the word envelope had followed her like a shadow. Paul walked toward them. That is a cleaning record, not evidence. His voice was still professional, but the edge had entered it now. Susan's smile had disappeared. Mrs. Whitaker, you may be misunderstanding what you saw. Ethan looked at the note, then at the recorder in his hand, then at Lily. A simple chain began to form, not complete, not enough to shout with, but too heavy to ignore. A recording that mentioned Connor. A camera clip missing 7 minutes. A clock that refused to match. A cleaning note placing the envelope near Paul's office, not Lily's locker. Before Ethan could speak, the music room door opened. Ms. Alvarez, Lily's music teacher, stepped out with a stack of sheet music pressed to her chest. Behind her stood Noah Price, small for his age, both hands gripping the straps of his backpack. His eyes found Lily and then dropped to the floor. Noah, Lily whispered. The boy's chin trembled. I didn't want them to be mad at my mom. Monica Reed appeared at the far end of the hallway, as if summoned by her own name before anyone said it. She wore the same pearl necklace, the same controlled expression, but her phone was already in her hand. Ms. Alvarez placed a gentle palm near Noah's shoulder without touching him. He told me something this morning, she said, only after I promised not to make him stand alone. Paul's face changed by almost nothing. A blink held too long, a breath taken through the nose. Susan said, "This is highly inappropriate." Ethan crouched so Noah would not have to look up at another adult. You don't have to be brave for us, he said. Just safe. Noah looked at Lily, and his voice came out thin. Connor had the envelope, near the lockers. He told me not to say anything because his dad would fix it. The fluorescent lights hummed. Mrs. Whitaker's mop water settled in its bucket without a ripple. Monica, still several steps away, said quickly, "This child has clearly been influenced." Ethan turned his head slowly. "How did you know which child?" Monica's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, the hallway did not feel like a school. It felt like a place where grown-ups had run out of doors to hide behind. Ethan could have played the recording right there. He could have let Paul's name and Connor's name burn down the hallway before the first bell rang. Instead, he looked at Noah, then Lily, then Mrs. Whitaker and Harold watching from the office doorway, and made the harder choice. No more closed rooms, he said. If this school wants to talk about trust, every parent needs to hear what trust has been covering. By 6:30 that evening, the school auditorium had been rearranged to look calm. Rows of folding chairs faced the stage, the banner above the curtain read "Restoring Trust," and a table sat beneath it with 3 water bottles, a microphone, and Principal Susan Blake's folder placed squarely in the center as if neatness could make a lie more respectable. Ethan Miller entered through the side doors with Lily beside him and a plain brown envelope under one arm. His denim jacket still carried the faint smell of brake dust, and his eyes looked tired, not triumphant. People turned as he passed. Some whispered. Monica Reed watched from the front row, her pearl necklace bright against her black dress. Her mouth set in that soft public smile people use when they are already sharpening a knife. Lily held the silver recorder with both hands. Its small red light was dark now, but the scratch on its casing caught the stage light like a thin white scar. Ms. Alvarez stood near the aisle with Noah behind her. Not on display, not pushed forward, only protected by the space she made with her body. Harold remained by the auditorium doors, hands folded, security badge clipped crookedly to his shirt. Mrs. Whitaker sat near the back, her work coat still on, the cleaning note folded in her purse like something too heavy for paper. Susan stepped to the microphone first. "Thank you all for coming," she said, voice warm, steady, practiced. "Tonight is not about blame. It is about healing confusion before it damages trust." Monica nodded visibly, inviting others to follow. Paul Henson stood beside the projector cart, tablet in hand, ready to make a machine speak for him. Ethan stayed in the aisle until Susan looked at him. "Mr. Miller, you requested transparency. We are giving you a respectful forum. He nodded once. Respectful would have started before my daughter was called a thief. A small stir moved through the room. Susan did not flinch. The word theft referred to an incident, not a child. Lily's fingers tightened around the recorder, but she did not speak. Paul turned on the projector. The hallway camera filled the screen. Lily's locker? Beige tile. The old wall clock above the trophy case. As you can see, Paul said, the relevant footage places Lily near the area where the envelope was later found. Monica rose before anyone asked her to. And I think we should remember, she said gently, that struggling families sometimes need support, not accusation. Mr. Miller may be overwhelmed. That was the first spike. For a moment, the room leaned back toward the old story. Poor father, frightened child, generous school. Ethan opened the brown envelope, but he did not empty it. He took out one photograph and placed it under the document camera. The same hallway frame appeared larger now, sharper. This is your clip, he said. That is your timestamp. And that is the wall clock. Paul's jaw tightened. Susan folded her hands. A wall clock is hardly conclusive. No, Ethan said. That's why I asked Harold. Every head turned toward the old guard at the doors. Harold did not step onto the stage. He only lifted his chin enough to be heard. That clock runs 3 minutes slow. Has since fall break. The room changed texture. Not belief yet, just friction. Paul quickly tapped his tablet. Mechanical clocks drift. Digital systems don't. The clip is still valid. That was the second spike, and for a breath it worked. A few parents nodded because technology sounded official and official sounded safe. Ethan reached into the envelope again and removed the access log Harold had copied before it could disappear. He placed it beside the clock photo. Then why did the same hallway file get exported twice after school closed? Paul stepped forward. That log is internal. So was the truth, Ethan said. Until you put my child's name on the outside of it. Susan's expression cooled. Mr. Miller, if your goal is to humiliate school staff, this meeting will end. Ethan looked at Lily, then at Noah, then back at Susan. My goal is not revenge. My goal is that the next scared child doesn't get chosen because adults think nobody will believe them. Ms. Alvarez put a steadying hand on Noah's chair. Mrs. Whitaker lowered her eyes, crying silently now. Lily took one careful step toward the stage stairs. Susan moved fast, but not fast enough to seem kind. Lily, sweetheart, this is not appropriate. Lily looked at her father. Ethan did not nod for her. He did not command her. He only held out his open hand, palm up, a promise that she could stop if she needed to. Lily climbed the first step, then the second, the recorder pressed to her chest. She called me a thief in front of everyone, she said, her small voice shaking through the room. I want the truth heard in front of everyone. And as she placed the silver recorder beside the microphone, Paul reached for the projector cable at the exact moment Lily's thumb found the play button. Lily's thumb pressed play before Paul could pull the cable. For 1 second, there was only the soft click of the recorder, the tiny mechanical sound of a child's courage entering a room full of adults. Then Paul Henson's voice filled the auditorium, low and tight through the microphone. If the timestamp stays, Connor is finished. A chair creaked somewhere in the middle row. Susan Blake's face lost its color, but the recorder kept going. Her own voice followed, colder than anyone in that room had ever heard from a school principal. Then make the hallway match the report. Nobody moved. The projector still showed Lily's locker, the beige tile, the wall clock Ethan had placed under the document camera, and the clean digital timestamp that no longer looked clean at all. Paul's hand hovered near the cable, useless now. The sound was already in the room. Papers stopped rustling. Phones stopped lifting. Even the air conditioner seemed to hold its breath above the ceiling tiles. Then the next part came, the part Ethan had stopped before Lily could hear it the first time. Paul's voice cracked with panic. Connor took it, Susan. It was stupid, but he panicked. Susan answered without hesitation. Then Lily Miller takes the fall. No one questions the mechanic's daughter. The words did not explode. They sank. They sank into the stage, into the folding chairs, into the hands of every parent who had whispered and every teacher who had looked away. Monica Reed's mouth opened, but no sentence came out. Her pearl necklace shifted once against her throat as she swallowed. Harold stared at the floor like a man ashamed of every minute he had stayed quiet. Mrs. Whitaker covered her mouth with both hands. Ms. Alvarez closed her eyes, and Noah, safe behind her chair, let out one small breath as if he had been holding it since the hallway. Lily did not smile. She did not look proud. She stood beside the microphone with both hands at her sides, smaller than the truth she had just released. Ethan stepped up only far enough to stand beside her. He did not touch the recorder. He did not point at Susan. He placed the access log next to the clock photo, then the cleaning note, then the printed email asking him to sign away Lily's name in exchange for quiet. One by one, the pieces formed a line on the table. No shouting, no performance, just a chain. Susan reached for the microphone, but her hand trembled enough that the metal stand clicked softly against her ring. This recording was obtained without context, she said, and even she seemed to hear how small that sounded. Ethan looked at her, then at the parents. The context is my daughter's empty backpack, 7 missing minutes, and a room full of adults who were asked to believe she was guilty because it was easier. Paul tried once. Connor is a minor. His privacy. Ethan turned to him, still quiet. I am not asking you to ruin a child. I am asking you to stop ruining mine. That sentence did what the recording had not. It gave the room permission to understand the difference between accountability and revenge. A woman in the second row stood first. She was not loud. She only said, "Clear Lily's record." Then another parent stood. Then another. The applause did not come yet. It was not that kind of moment. It was heavier. People rose like they were standing under a responsibility, not a celebration. Susan looked toward Monica for rescue, but Monica had lowered her eyes to her phone, where the message thread she had used to spread the rumor suddenly looked less like concern and more like evidence. At the side of the stage, a school board member who had been sitting quietly near the aisle stepped forward and asked Harold to preserve the original server logs, the access records, and every email related to Lily Miller's suspension. His voice was formal, shaken, but clear. Pending independent review, this disciplinary action is frozen effective immediately. The word frozen moved through the room like cold water. Lily's hand found Ethan's sleeve. He looked down and saw that she was not shaking anymore, only tired. The recorder sat on the table between them and the people who had named her falsely, its red light finally dark. And as the room remained silent, Ethan understood the hardest part had not been proving the truth. It would be deciding what kind of mercy and what kind of justice to ask for now that everyone was finally listening. The auditorium did not empty all at once. Parents moved slowly, scraping chairs back with a kind of shame no one knew how to name. Susan Blake and Paul Henson were asked to step into the side office with the school board member. Not dragged, not shouted at, just removed by the same kind of procedure they had once used against Lily. Monica Reed stood near the front row, her phone lowered, her face pale beneath the soft makeup, while the message thread that had spread Lily's name remained open on the screen like a stain. Ethan did not look at her long. He had won the room, but he refused to become the kind of man who needed a room to suffer. He stood beside Lily as the board member returned with a written statement, his voice measured and formal. Lily Miller's suspension was lifted. Her record would be corrected immediately. The allegation against her had no standing, and an independent review would examine the altered footage, the access logs, and the conduct of school administrators. Harold would not be disciplined for speaking. Mrs. Whitaker's cleaning note would be entered into the review. Noah would be protected from retaliation, and no child would be asked to stand alone before adults again. Only then did Lily breathe like she had been waiting 3 days for permission. Ms. Alvarez walked up the stage steps, carrying Lily's wrinkled music sheet. "You don't have to sing tonight," she said gently. Lily looked at the paper, then at the silver recorder resting on the table. It no longer looked like evidence. It looked small again, scratched and ordinary, the place where her mother's voice still lived. "Can I?" she asked. Ethan crouched in front of her, his oil-stained sleeve brushing the polished gym floor. "Only if it belongs to you," he said. Lily nodded. The room, half empty now, became quiet in a different way. Not the stunned silence of being caught, but the softer silence of people choosing to listen. Ms. Alvarez placed the microphone lower. Ethan picked up the recorder and handed it back to Lily, not as a weapon, not as proof, but as a piece of home. Lily pressed it once against her chest, then began to sing the song she had practiced for the mother who had taught her that hard words could be spoken slowly. Her voice trembled at first. Then it steadied. Nobody clapped over her. Nobody whispered. Even the fluorescent lights seemed less harsh against the blue curtain. When the last note faded, the applause rose carefully, almost reverently. But Lily did not smile like someone who had defeated anyone. She stepped down, slipped the recorder into her backpack, and took her father's hand. Monica approached, eyes wet, but Ethan held up one palm, not cruelly. "Not tonight," he said. "An apology should not ask a child to carry it before she's ready." Monica stopped, and for once silence taught her more than speech. Outside, the night air smelled of wet pavement and cut grass. Ethan's old pickup waited beneath the parking lot light, the same truck everyone had seen as proof he was less than them. Now Lily climbed into it as if it were the safest place in the world. Before he closed her door, she looked up and whispered, "Did I tell the truth right?" Ethan's face softened, tired and proud and broken open by grace. "You told it with dignity." He shut the door gently, walked around to the driver's side, and sat for a moment with both hands on the wheel. No sirens, no celebration, no revenge. Just a father, a daughter, and a small silver recorder that had carried a dead mother's voice, a child's fear, and finally the truth. And in that quiet, the world did not need to be loud to be changed.